And welcome Just a Family. This is giving you something to talk about, or Just a Live TV, as I like to call it. Today, we're going to be talking about, do you like who you are? Today, my guest and I are talking about the traumas and catalysts that happen when you decide you don't like yourself anymore and you want to change. I will tell you her exact wordings shortly because it was my favorite part of our pre-screening interview. Today's episode has been sponsored by Phoenix Identity. Want to know who you are, not the people pleasing, not living your truth, not giving everything to everyone and taking on the person everyone else thinks you should be, the true person or the true version of yourself that is at your core, who wants to live a life that they love, who sees beauty in the world, and just has a positive outlook. If you want to reconnect to that person inside of you, go and set up a clarity session with Phoenix Identity and learn who you truly are and not who everybody else tells you you should be. All right. I'm going to hand it over to our guest speaker to introduce themselves. Omni, would you like to do the honors?
Hello, hi everybody. I'm Omni Wren and I am a transformational coach and I work with trauma. So I work with life-changing injuries and I coach people back into their lives, back into their jobs, back into their relationships after they've had traumatic experiences. So that's what I do. That is my job.
And we are definitely going to be touching on that today. The main reason that I titled today's episode the way that I did was a comment that you had made, and I went and rewatched the video, and it was a question that you had asked yourself, and it was, why am I showing up for you? And that really just moved me. As soon as I heard that, I'm like, yes, I love that. So would you care to explain that a little bit?
Okay, cool. So a bit about my background then is probably a good place to start. So 15 years ago, I was in a car accident and it was pretty bad, to be honest. And I got several injuries across my body. I developed a hunch and chronic pain and chronic fatigue, and I ended up addicted to medicated drugs. Or prescribed drugs, if you like. And I ended up in a rehabilitation center. And I worked through that and I started getting my life back together. And I was really excited. I moved out with my friends and I got another job. And I thought I'd got my ticket for freedom. So it'd taken me 6.5 years to get from the accident to there. And the day of my job, my first day, I was on the way to the job and I was in a second car accident. So I never made it to the job. And I got more injuries down my body then. I developed PTSD and a really dark depression that I didn't know how to deal with. Not only that, I was in and out of hospital for about 2 years before I had emergency surgery for the seatbelt trauma across my stomach. I almost lost my life to that operation, actually. So my body went into shock and shut down. And I spent 5 weeks being fed by machines and kept going by machines, basically. Then I came out of there and I started getting better again. And I was getting up and up. And then I sort of plateaued and I started going downhill and I didn't know why. And I just thought it was because of the operation. But actually, 2 years after that, I had blood tests and my blood was transparent. And I'd actually internally bled for 2 years after that operation. And I had 1/5 of the blood cells I should have had. So I was a very poorly girl. And then at that point, I decided that I wasn't going to be a victim to this anymore, and I was going to start to get better, and I was going to really work because I'd worked so hard to keep my life. I was going to make it worth something. And actually, when I was talking to you about deciding who you want to be, we were talking about a life coach that I went to see, actually. And I was chatting to him and we were just doing some role play, if you like, where you sit in the chair and you talk back to yourself and then you reflect how that makes you feel. And I started talking to myself, excuse me. And I started going, I don't like you anymore. I don't like you. I don't like what's happened to you. I don't like your life. I don't like what you've become. And then it started ramping up and I started getting angrier and angrier. And then in the end, I just went, I don't even know why I turn up to be you anymore. And the silence was eerie, but so clarifying to hear those words. And in that moment, I really realized that ultimately I have the choice. So I have the choice to turn up to keep being that person, or I have the choice to make the change to be somebody else. And that was a pivotal moment in my recovery.
Absolutely. And it's stressful when you go through so much trauma, and you've gone through a lot of very physical, emotional, mental trauma due to those accidents and everything that came after that. And I'm so proud of you where you are now. Like it's fantastic where you are now, and how much transformation, not only for yourself, but the people that you now help, because you do have the background and the knowledge and the thought process to help people who have been in, traumatic injuries or situations. So going today for the topic for, do you like who you are? I think we all kind of ask ourselves that question. And at the same time, we don't ask ourselves that question, right? We don't ask ourselves, or we don't tell ourselves, hey, I don't like who you are right now. Like, why do I have anything to do with you? And I challenge everybody watching or catching the replay. Do you have anybody, or have you, and I can guarantee we all have you had anybody in your life that has been so toxic, and maybe not intentionally, maybe it's just somebody who rubs you the wrong way, or that as soon as they open their mouth, they're very condescending, or somebody who's just very toxic for you to be around, makes you feel very bad, makes you feel really negativity. Now, on the other hand, it's not their responsibility to make you feel anyway, and we let people make us feel that way. But how often are you in the company of somebody who you get triggered by? Right?
Exactly that. And I think the other thing is, like, when we're children, we're brought up and you get sent to school or play school, you get sent out into the world, and you're almost under the impression that you have to make as many friends or connections as you possibly can. So you start collecting all of these people, you're collecting all these things, but you never actually realize what they are or what they are not giving you. And I think as you get older, and definitely through my trauma, through my story, I've realized that not everybody is a positive influence, but also that choice again, like I can choose to turn up to have that influence, or I can choose to shut it down.
And absolutely, where I was trying to go with that for a moment was that, how many times do we let go of people in our lives? How many times do we say, I might love you, I might honor and respect you, but I can't handle how I feel around you anymore. And I've done that. As I got older, it got to a point where I was like, I don't want fake friends. I want people who are there to support me, encourage me, enlighten me, empower me, call me out of my shit. Absolutely, pardon my language, but I want people who are going to help make my life better, not people who are going to question me or ridicule me or any of those things. Now, where I was actually going with that whole thing was, why don't we do that to ourselves? Right? If we have the ability to, completely cut off ties with family, with friends, with coworkers, with careers, if you're not happy in your job, what do? You quit and you find a different job, or you find a different job and then quit, whatever the scenario is. If you have friends who are creating that toxic environment for you, or you feel toxic around, then you choose to let those people go. But we don't do that with ourselves. We don't question, well, I'm angry all the time. Why am I angry all the time? What does that look like? What's causing that? You go to work, or you don't even want to get up to go to work, and you're just angry or depressed or sad or no motivation or no understanding. we get to that, there's reasons behind that. So when we stop and ask ourselves, why do I even show up to be you or for you or to go around you? We actually get that clarity of, well, why do I?
Yeah. Yeah. And we spoke before as well, actually, about this life coach who he's now become my friend, actually. But he was probably the first person who really spoke the truth to me and like held up a mirror and really started giving me the clarity. So like not long after I had this pivotal moment, if you like, I was also then back in his office because I don't know, genuinely, I still don't know if I can have children because of my trauma. But I was talking to him about it and I was saying, you know, when I have this child, I'm going to have this little girl and I'm going to look after her and nurture her. And she's not going to have any of my stresses. She's not going to have my limiting beliefs. She's going to have this awesome life. And I'm not going to let her be influenced by these things and have this terrible like feeling around her. I'm not going to give her any of that. I'm going to have this crystal clear life for her. And he turned around to me and he said, well, that's interesting. And I was like, interesting. And he said, because I don't think you're capable of giving that to somebody else, let alone a daughter. And I was like, wow, like really, that's really powerful. And then he said, and then I was like, I was just silent. And he said, because you will not even give it to yourself. And that was the second moment that I was like, oh God, oh God. Not only do I turn up to be somebody that I don't want to be, I'm not capable of giving these qualities or these great things to someone else because I can't even give them to myself. And I started stewing on this. And actually, from when I was a child, I had the name Omni Wren for a daughter of mine. And I sat with it for a little while, actually, for maybe a couple of weeks. And I went back in his office and I said, you're going to think I'm crazy. You're going to think I've lost it. And he said, of all the things that have come out of your mouth, I don't think you can really shock me anymore. And I said, I'm taking it. I'm taking it, actually, because I've really thought about this. And if I'm going to give all of these great things to this name, then I'm taking the name. And so I legally changed my name. And I gave myself everything that I would give that daughter. And that really, like, not only empowering, it was so enlightening for me because I could almost like draw a complete line. And I threw away all of my clothes and I threw away many of my possessions. And I moved away from many of those toxic groups. And I literally just wiped my slate clean. And I think like that is, I'm not saying it's easy by any stretch, but I think it saved me. I think it saved me.
It's not easy regardless. You look at, so somebody like my experience where at 31 or 32 years old, I finally acknowledged that I'm a psychic intuitive medium. Now, whether you believe it or not, anybody out there, that's totally up to you. I'm not saying you have to believe what I'm saying. I believe it. That's what matters to me. You believe yourself. And I love to highlight that. So that's my little rant there. But I came out as a psychic intuitive medium, and I had a lot of people look at me funny and ask me questions, family and friends, right? I had a former family member go, what, you're psychic now? And I'm like, well, I've always been, I've just never really said anything, right? I moved away for about 10 years. And during that time, that's when I really awoke to who I was and what I was capable of and started coaching. So when I moved back, I moved from, one province to another. I'm in Canada, so provinces. I moved back to my hometown where all the people that I had known since birth were still here. And as I started to tell people what I did as a coach, as a psychic intuitive medium, spiritual teacher, all of that, it was questioned. I had one friend actually tell me, well, you shouldn't really tell people, what you do. And I'm like, well, why? Like, why not? She says, well, you're not established yet. And I said, but that doesn't really, like, why wouldn't I embrace who I am and what I love to do and what I love to talk about, right? If I can help somebody just by telling them what I do, not even as a client, but as a, clarity of, hey, you're not the only one, or whatever, then why wouldn't I? And so it is hard, regardless of whether you leave those toxic groups or not. It can be overwhelming, it can be scary, and it can be hard to open yourself up to the way that you express yourself, or, titles that you've now subscribed to, or, changing your name where people are, you've got name change, you've got identity change, you've got expression, you've got gender, you've got sexuality, you've got, so many different changes that we can make, and everybody judges us for it.
Yeah. And I think that's like another thing that I've really realized, actually. I would rather be judged by somebody else than judging myself. Like, I'd rather they judged me than me permanently like be judging and beating myself for being something I don't want to be. And I think the other thing as well is, like, it's really hard to move forward. It's really hard to make a new life. It's really hard to make these changes, but it is equally as hard to stay where you are to start with. And so I don't think, people really realize this. So, like, we just get into a habit, just get into this habit of being somebody that we're comfortable with, somebody that we know. Like, this reinvention you don't see it very often. And like you say, like, there's no reason why don't we ever regenerate? Like, it seems bizarre.
Well, a lot of it, as an identity expert, and that's what we're going with today. As an identity expert, we're not really changing who we are. We're tapping into who we always were, right? We grow and we change. You've always been Omni Wren. The fact that you've loved that name, you've, embodied that personality, that identity, that's always been you, right? People don't realize that, when we become husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, girlfriends, boyfriends, as our peers and our teachers and our classmates and the people that are around us, they all kind of help us build this belief system. And when that belief system is not aligned to who we truly are, that's when we struggle. And I've asked people this on numerous occasions. Would you rather stay where you are as you are, or would you rather put in the work and be happy? Right? It's the potential. Would you rather take the risk of being happy or not taking any risk and staying where you are for the rest of your life? Right? And that's one of those really big questions of, do you like who you are? Do you like where you are? Do you like, really getting and digging deep into, do I like who I am? Unconditional love. And you kind of talked about that with you wanting other people to judge you. When other people judge you, or they when anybody makes an opinionated comment on anything about you, that comment is completely about them. It actually has nothing to do with you. If somebody looks at you and says, I think your hair I don't like your hair like that. Let's just say, I don't like your hair up. That has nothing to do with you. It's not a direct reflection of whether you've got your hair up or not. They don't like hair up. It has nothing to do with you, right? Because you might think you look gorgeous. It has everything to do with them. Unconditional love is loving yourself regardless of anything. It is understanding that it is okay not to like things about yourself, right? I don't like everything about myself, but I unconditionally love myself. I can look in the mirror and go, you're a sexy beast over here. And I'm just totally fine with it, right? Do I like the fact that I have stretch marks? Do I like the fact that I'm overweight or that, my teeth aren't perfectly white? No, I don't like any of those things, but I still love myself. I can still hold respect and honor and just love for who I am and why these things are the way they are. And that's part of getting that. Do you like who you are? First step is understanding who actually you are.
Or what you want. So I think that's another thing that comes hand in hand with it, doesn't it? Like, what do you want? Do you want to stay? Do you want to limit yourself? Do you want to like always have that on you, or do you want to get into that growth space, like into that, and I think that definitely in society today, we're almost taught not to go, I want this. Like, it's almost like, when they say I want never gets, that's like a saying here in the UK, like, so I want never gets is a thing. And then I think that sort of like shades people away from really making these true decisions about what they want and who they want to be. And I think the other thing is, as you get older, like, as you get older, so you're like, when you were like in your 30s and announcing to people, that you had these powers, like, like almost like you can't change once you get older. So you're like molded when you're younger, and you develop who you are when you're younger, and then you have to be that person forever, which is just such a belief that I was one of them. I genuinely believed that. I didn't think it was within my power to change.
It also tests their comfort zone too, right? If somebody's known you for 6 months, a year or more, they know you as a certain version of you, right? So when you start changing that, you start changing the dynamic of that relationship, because you're different and the way that they see you becomes different. And again, that falls on them. It doesn't necessarily fall on you. When you're trying to better your life or better your situation, you're doing it for you. You're doing it out of a place of self-love. And that doesn't mean that you're intentionally going, I'm going to leave you behind, or, we can't be friends because you're not where I am. It has nothing to do with that. It's, I need to be where I need to be, and I can still love you from that place. And you had made a comment and I wanted to touch on it, and I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think I think it's some people as well have said to me, actually many people have said to me that they are not going to call me Omni, or that I don't have capacity for that change, or that they don't agree with what I'm doing. And I think that stops us a lot of the time. Like, I've started over this, even though I made the decision, it's taken me a time to get like comfortable in myself about it. And I think you're right. It's not really a question of whether I'm doing the right thing for myself. It's like, are they doing the right things for themselves? Like, and definitely when I'm talking to my clients and I'm discussing this with them, I'm like, it is completely within your power to make these kind of choices. Mm-hmm. Completely within your power.
So in the pre-part of this episode, I talked about our sponsor, Phoenix Identity. That's my company, and I'm not promoting it. There was a comment that I had made is, the people pleasing and the not living up to everybody else's expectations. For many, many years, society has told us that our life has to go a certain way. It has to be a certain way, right? And throughout that process, a lot of us have created these beliefs or these goals that don't really align to who we are, right? I remember growing up when I was, in my preteens to teens, I was always told you couldn't be an artist. You'll be starving and you'll never make any money, and you have to be a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, or whatever. How many people, and I'm going to not single out, but I'm going to reference mothers at one point, but how many people are in a life that they're not happy with because they didn't follow their truth? They didn't follow their purpose. They didn't embrace who they truly wanted to be. You hear a lot of people who are and here I'll single out mothers for a moment, or use them as an example, is where I'm going with this. How many times have we been told that mothers have to put aside their goals and their dreams and their wishes to have children, or to support their partners while their partners go back to school or build their businesses? And then they're left in their 30s, 40s, 50s trying to decide, what about me? Right? What do I want? What do I need? And it's a very hard situation to be in that, but it happens all the time. One of my favorite shows with my husband is Home Improvement. And I don't know if you've ever watched it, but old school show. And we always said that was him and I, just the dynamic between the two was him and I. But you look, and she had 3 children, and she went back to school to be a therapist, right? A psychologist. And even back in the 90s, they were showing us this potential, this capability to reinvent who we are. And I don't think it's ever been a reinvention. I think it's just reconnection. I think we're reconnecting to who we were meant to be the whole time. But society got in the way, family got in the way, friends got in the way, expectations got in the way, traumatic injuries got in the way. Whatever that looks like, everything else gets in our way of being who we want to be, until we're at that point where, do you actually like yourself?
Yeah. And I think it really hit me when I got to that point. Like, I didn't realize, like, I'd been going this path for some time. And until those words came out of my mouth, I don't even know why I show up to be you anymore. I didn't even realize, like, how much hate I'd made for myself, or how much I'd got into a situation that I didn't think I could get out with, or how trapped I was in these cycles. Like, you just don't realize, because they just build over time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and I'm really excited as well, like this whole like reinvention that I've like uncovered, like this true potential, and these, like, I literally feel like I've got a new lease of life. Like, I've had to let go of a lot, but I'm so much lighter, and I feel like I'm excited. And especially, like, that I don't really live in my trauma anymore. So that's another thing, because I was just living it day and day and day, and I was just getting so bogged down. It's almost like it's allowed me to park it like as a chapter. And I don't think we really see our lives as chapters, but I talk about them as chapters quite a lot. I just park it as a chapter, and now I'm on my next chapter. I've already written that one.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm just in a new version. I'm just in the next stage.
We can't change where we've been or what we've done. Anything past tense is just that, past tense. We can't rewrite it. But I'm gonna caveat that. We can't redo the past, and we can't rewrite how it happened. But what we can do is we can rewrite, or even write, how it impacts our future and our present. A lot of people don't realize just how much, and we're doing this episode tomorrow, is your past controlling your present and future? That's tomorrow's episode, because that is so important, right? So we're going to be kind of piggybacking off of trauma, because your trauma from the past controlled you up until that point, up until you decided, hey, no, right? Park it and go. We're going to park it in long-term parking, and we're just going to forget it's there for now. No, I absolutely love that. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we get going here?
No, just that, like you say, like, if you're listening to this now and you're thinking, I'm not really sure if I'm who I want to be, just think with it for a minute. Think about who you do want to be, and just go and make it happen. Mm-hmm. Just go and make it happen, because it is completely doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any questions about that, of course, you can reach out to myself and Omni, because we've been through that, been there, done that, right? And know how to help other people through it. It's literally what we do. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It has been a blast. I love these topics.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. If anybody would like to connect to Omni, you can do so. Her links are in the description of this episode. I believe we have your Facebook, Instagram, and her email. So go and check her out, see what she's got going on, hear more about her story. In the description of this episode, go and connect with Omni. Our sponsor today, A Phoenix Identity. If you want to know who you truly are, go to A Phoenix Identity, because that's exactly what it is. And one of my favorite topics, and one of the reasons it's called A Phoenix Identity, is what's the journey of a phoenix? When a phoenix doesn't like its life, what does it do? Burns it all to the ground, and it restarts as a phoenix. It doesn't change who it is, but it changes its life. And journey of a phoenix, why not find out who you are at your core and relive it? So or not relive it, redo it. If you'd like to be a guest speaker, blogger, or sponsor, or if you want to see a topic featured on the show, please make sure to reach out to us at justalivetv.com. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. Again, Omni, thank you. To everybody watching, thank you. And I will see all of you on the next episode.